Previously, on Mass Effect 3, we uncovered the terrible secret of Cerberus. Today, it's time we put down the rabid dog for good.
Shepard, the intel you sent looks good. The fleets are ready to go.
But?
Once we're committed against Cerberus, it won't be long before the Reapers take notice.
And the Crucible?
Ready, except for the catalyst. But there's no way to hide the ships we'll be sending at Cerberus. Once we attack, the Crucible won't stay safe for long. For all intents and purposes, an assault on Cerberus will be the first stage of our attack on Earth.
Atlas Station is the point of no return for Mass Effect 3. Once started, we're locked into the endgame sequence. No more side missions, no more scanning, we're done. So of course, it's also the culmination of our romance subplot, which in fine BioWare tradition ends with Shepard having sex. But we've talked about romances before, so let's not start again.
Mobilized.
The armory's prepared, the shuttle is primed. It'll still be a few hours before the fleet's mobilized, though.
Now we just wait.
Yeah. I was hoping you might want to wait together.
Stay here with me. Till the call comes.
Of course. Not one moment for granted.
This is the third and final dream sequence in the game. It's also really short, which is a shame, because by this point you should have accumulated loads of NPC deaths, even if you saved as many as possible in the previous games. The whispers you hear are also all specific to your particular circumstances. For example, if Rex died on Vermeer, you'll hear a quote from that confrontation. But if you killed him after he discovered you sabotaged the genophage cure, you'll hear a quote from that scene instead. Loads of variation, loads of reactivity that you don't quite get because it's only time for the 4 quotes before the sequence is over. Unfortunate. Anyway, the dream sequences finally make their purpose clear with this last scene. They don't just reflect Shepard's guilt and grief, but also, through that guilt and grief, illustrate the way forward. Instead of ending on Shepard's horrified reaction as the child burns in fire, this time we see a double of Shepard stand placidly with the child in the flames together. I'd like to emphasise that this isn't some falsely profound, sudden and tragic prophecy of death, but actually a triumphant moment. This is Shepard taking on the lessons taught back to him by Mordin and Legion, and to a lesser extent other characters like Thane. We've talked about Shepard being an agent of change, a boundary-crossing figure that inspires others to become agents of change themselves. So Mordin hangs out with Shepard for a month and suddenly realises he needs to cure the genophage. Legion joins the crew and learns individuality. Miranda drops Cerberus, Rex becomes a leader, Liara grows up, so on and so forth. Mordin and Legion are important because they're the pivot characters for 2 of the key arcs of Mass Effect 3. Both characters drive the dramatic changes to the galaxy in each arc. Both characters end up dying in order to achieve this. Makes sense, really. In order to achieve total transformation, the old must be swept away. As architect of the second genophage, Mordin must go. As a microcosm of the old Geth psychology, Legion must cease to be. Only then can there be a Krogan race free from genetic oppression. Only then can the Geth be free from cognitive control. It's quite Christian, really. Mordin takes the genophage into himself as its designer, then destroys both himself and the tower that spread it in a big sacrifice that pays the debt forever, curing the Krogan. And what this dream is saying is that Shepard's going to have to do the same thing. If they want to end death, thus solving the Creator-created cycle of violence and preventing the madness of Cronus, then they're going to have to sacrifice themselves to achieve it.
Joker, what's our status?
Let's talk about boss battles. The upcoming fight of Leng is the last boss battle we'll face in the game and the series. Mass Effect's not had much luck with boss battles, I think, starting with Saren back in the original. Remember Saren? Remember his goofy hoverboard thing? Remember his skeletal Geth Hopper ultimate form? God, that was terrible and unfun. I mean, the hoverboard just looked silly and camp, or more camp than usual, but the Geth Hopper form was just tedious. Erratic movement, lackluster damage, too many hit points. Mass Effect 2 didn't fare much better with the Human Reaper, a largely gratuitous boss fight. Its vulnerable spots were only briefly vulnerable, and it could summon infinite waves of collectors, and it fought at long range, so anyone who couldn't use a rifle faced an uphill struggle just to damage the thing. Plus, again, a little too camp even for Mass Effect. In Mass Effect 3, the only boss fights are with Leng, although you could argue Geth Primes, Banshees and Atlas Mechs count as mini-bosses. Leng doesn't put in a great showing either. You saw the fight on Thessia unedited. Leng skids around, flailing at squad members, while the player blows him away with superior firepower, stopping only so that his shields can be recharged in an obvious attempt to prolong the battle. Leng's attacks are weak, barely noticeable, and require little action, perhaps a result of giving him a sword for a primary weapon. The fight we'll see at the end of this video fares a little better, if only because the battlefield terrain changes dramatically whenever Leng regenerates for the next phase. I think Mass Effect has a natural disadvantage when it comes to boss fights. In fact, I think it has two. First is that it's a third-person shooter. Second is that it's a role-playing game. I think the mechanics of a good shooter, first person or third, make it difficult to design traditional boss battles. If you think about it, shooters are about fast aiming to deliver damage, and clever movement to evade damage. That's physically, mechanically, what you do in a shooter. You find the target, aim, fire, find a target, aim, fire. Obviously you want to do this as quickly and accurately as possible, but of course quickly and accurately are in direct opposition to one another, and that's where player skill comes in. That's where shooter gameplay is found. But a battle against a single enemy, like, I don't know, the final boss of the game, completely elides that gameplay dimension. You acquire target, aim, then fire, 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 fire. This can be ameliorated by the other half of shooter gameplay, movement and evasion, as you have to reacquire the target after you move, but I'm sure we all remember boss battles that could be beaten in minutes, simply by circle strafing a single, large, mostly static boss enemy with non-threatening attack patterns. Either of these bosses were bullet sponge health sinks that you repetitively pounded away on, or they were flimsy, underwhelming paper enemies that folded after a few shots from a rocket launcher or sniper rifle. This dichotomy suggests a third option, some intermediate sweet spot with just the right amount of health, but actually I'd like to suggest that there is no such sweet spot. The problem isn't the numerical amount of health, it's that you do nothing interesting with it because you've left out half the gameplay. I don't think it's a mistake that the most enjoyable shooter boss fights tend towards either lots of evasion and movement, or have multiple vulnerable spots that players eliminate in turn to damage the boss. Dead Space is a good example of that, as are perhaps the Metroid Prime games. We see neither, however, in Mass Effect. The other inbuilt disadvantage is that Mass Effect is a role-playing game. RPGs tend to have good villains because of a design emphasis on story and narrative and character design and whatnot, but these villains don't always translate into good boss fights though. This is less to do with specific boss design and more with general RPG mechanical principles though. Most RPGs backload player combat performance onto the inventory and character sheet screen. A character's effectiveness is determined more by the quality of their equipment and statistics than by the tactical decisions the player makes in combat. This isn't to say that player strategy is irrelevant, just that it's outweighed by larger strategic variables like weapon power and feat synergy. This impacts boss design, partly because the encounter is partially determined before the player even steps into the final arena. For example, would Leng be so trivial and boring if I wasn't carrying a Black Widow 10 with infiltrator abilities that maxed out my sniper rifle alpha strike damage? It also impacts boss design in that it introduces a large amount of variability into the encounter which can't be altered or changed without restarting the game. Leng's design has to strike a balance between being a challenge for aforementioned power builds, but also remain beatable by players still wielding Avenger 1s with random skill allocation. And this is all aside from the general wonkiness and shoddy design work that plagues most RPGs to this day as well, mind.
Updated their encryption. There may be a slight delay as I bypass security.
How's Cerberus reacting to us breaching the door?
They are sealing off as much of the base as they can. Most obvious routes to the central lab are blocked.
So we're on track to the ending here. As you no doubt remember, there was a bit of controversy over the ending. One of the things that came out of the ending arguments was this idea that BioWare doesn't listen to their fans. As far as I can tell, this is because BioWare attempted to defend Mass Effect 3 in the face of overwhelming audience dissatisfaction. And, like most fan opinions, it is poorly considered and self-serving. I say this because if you actually look at how BioWare writes their games, then you realise the opposite is true. BioWare are incredibly sensitive to what their fans think, and it hugely influences the content of their writing. Previously in this series, we've noted how BioWare adjusts their writing to favour characters and ideas that catch on with the audience. Garrus and his calibrations is a prime example of this, BioWare running a joke into the ground solely because their fans liked it. See also EDI's catchphrases and Tali's promotion to full-time squadmate in Mass Effect 3. In Neverwinter Nights, Hordes of the Underdark, players can talk to the bard Deacon Scalesinger about the books he wrote, stand-ins for the original game and the first expansion, and the majority of options that the player can take in this dialogue are very critical, much like fan reactions to the two games. BioWare does this again in Dragon Age Inquisition, this time with Varric taking the brunt for the poorly received Dragon Age 2. It's not just BioWare that does this, Obsidian has as well, and many other developers too, no doubt. But BioWare does tend towards the cringing and apologetic more than others. I bring this all up because we got another somewhat clumsy example of this phenomenon with these video logs. These logs appear late in the game, largely to acknowledge fan queries, or complaints, about Mass Effect 2. Why did Shepard work with Cerberus when they're terrorists? Why doesn't Shepard show any angst over having died and then come back? Personally, I think these are questions that in reality contain their own answers, if you think about it. The important issue isn't the particular moral argument Shepard uses to justify collaborating with his former enemies. It's how Shepard collaborating with his former enemies informs the conflict in Mass Effect 2. Not just in how desperate the Collector conflict must be, but also in the tension that we see play out as the actual conflict of the story, the conflict between Shepard as transcendent agent and Cerberus as pragmatic reactionaries and echoes of the Reapers. But that doesn't stop BioWare coming up with answers to these questions, late in the game when nobody cares and it no longer matters. The fans wanted their official canon explanation, and now they have it. Similar situation with the extended cut in Leviathan. The 3 later Mass Effect 3 DLCs are an extended apologia to the fans, intended specifically to address core complaints about the game, whether it's an adjusted ending sequence, an explanation for the Reapers, or more content focusing on the characters. It's interesting to compare these DLCs with what we see and hear in the final hours of Mass Effect 3.
Should be more than sufficient. No.
The final hours of Mass Effect 3 is one of those gaming journalism fluff pieces that promises an inside look into the development of your favourite games and doesn't deliver. it probes lightly and returns little of interest. Except that the final hours of Mass Effect 3 was written in the time between Mass Effect 3 going gold and Mass Effect 3 being released. So you actually end up with an insight into BioWare's head about what they thought of Mass Effect 3 before they started going into damage control mode of the negative fan reaction. And it's really interesting, and quite sad too, to see Mac Walter's initial thoughts on the ending. "I want to leave it open," he says. "I don't want to define everything. I want to leave room for audience discussion. I want people to be free to imagine and explore their own ideas. That's what games are all about. I don't want to shut that down by putting in my answers when that's not really necessary." This is a stance that was widely mocked, with lots of speculation taken from Walter's design notes or scribbles on the ending of the game. But I think it's a bit tragic, really, to see that disconnect between BioWare and the audience. To see BioWare offering this opportunity to engage with the text, only to be soundly rejected because of a desire for encyclopedic knowledge of the fiction. To see BioWare then scrape and bow before popular opinion, completely reversing their attitude and position so that nerds can indulge their terrible fetish for canon. At the moment, the gold standard for boss battles seems to be Platinum Games. They're the developers responsible for Okami and Metal Gear Rising, amongst others. These two games in particular have fantastic final boss fights. Yama in Okami demands the player use every single brush technique learned in the game to defeat him. It's a long battle with multiple phases, each requiring a different strategy. The Senator Armstrong fight in Metal Gear Rising is also well designed. The pacing's great, 3 very different parts, each of which has multiple phases. Again, players must master every skill, attacking, blocking, dodging, blade mode, quick time events to defeat him. It helps that both these games are third-person brawlers. Players have access to a wide variety of inputs, which keeps gameplay varied and engaging. Boss battles can draw upon several different skills to create a challenge, whether it's evading Metal Gear Excelsus's area effect attacks or parrying Monsoon's whirlwind assault. In contrast, you can see how Mass Effect doesn't start with the best footing when it comes to boss battles, a legacy from both its genres. And I think the more successful Mass Effect boss battles, like Tila Vasir or Shepard's Clone, make an effort to avoid the more common pitfalls. Tila Vasir is a highly mobile boss fight with lots of target reacquisition and changing position to avoid being flanked by her charges. Shepard's Clone is also highly mobile, aggressive, literally uses the same abilities and tactics as the player, and is accompanied by minions and Brooks, who the clone can resurrect if they get close to her dead body. Progress is visible too. Brooks and the minions die when taken out. The clone's Medigel stocks visibly deplete when damaged enough. Even some of the minor boss battles in Mass Effect 2, like the Warden and his pylons in Jack's Recruitment, or Jador, her Emir mech, Krogan clones and rocket launcher in Grunt's Recruitment, work pretty well. But ultimately it's quite telling that BioWare eschewed a final boss fight for Mass Effect 3. They even considered pitting Shepard against a Reaperized Elusive Man mutant before changing their minds. Our final combat challenge will be an endurance contest against unlimited Reaper forces in an arena with open firing lanes all around and Reaper beams blasting across the map. It's a lot more successful than Saren or the Human Reaper, though I think it may have its own problems. But that's a topic for another day.
We need to locate the Prothean VI.
Shepard, you're in my chair.
This chair's about the only damn thing you have left. Cerberus is finished.
On the contrary, we have achieved everything I ever imagined. Almost everything.
Yeah. We all saw what you accomplished on Sanctuary. but it's not the same as controlling a Reaper.
A significant hurdle. But thanks to the Prothean VI, I have what I need to make it a reality.
The Catalyst.
Yes.
What is the Catalyst? And how exactly will it help you control the Reapers?
You'll have to ask the VI yourself. I'm done helping you.
When did you start?
You think because I'm willing to use the enemy's tactics that they're no longer my enemy? Everything, Shepard, everything I've done has uplifted humanity. Not only above other species in our galaxy, but over the Reapers.
Bullshit. If you were willing to do everything it took, you'd have worked with me.
I don't think so.
You're desperate. How many have you killed? Together, we would already have the Crucible and the Catalyst.
You wouldn't listen. You're still not listening. Destroying the Reapers would be the biggest mistake of our brief existence. And nothing you can say will ever convince me otherwise.
Even with Cerberus in ruins, you still think you can do this your way?
I'd expect you to say that. You never truly believed in us. Cerberus isn't just an organization or the people behind it. Cerberus is an idea. That idea is not so easily destroyed. Besides, I've already acquired what you're looking for.
Edie.
I've almost got it.
Edie, I'm surprised at you, working so hard to bring about the Reaper's destruction.
Don't listen to him.
You could have destroyed Eva's body, but instead, you chose to control it.
It was necessary.
My point exactly.
I've got it.
Online. Security breach detected.
Enjoy your little chat, but don't overstay your welcome.
You are attempting to recover me from indoctrinated forces?
Yes, I need to know what the Catalyst is.
Security protocols have been overridden. I will comply. The Catalyst enhances dark energy transmissions and coordinates the entire mass relay network. In your cycle, it is known as the Citadel.
What?
The Catalyst is the Citadel.
So the Crucible and Citadel together can stop the Reapers.
That is correct.
But the Citadel was built by the Reapers.
The plans for the Crucible were passed down to us from the previous cycle, and countless cycles before that. At some point, it is difficult to pinpoint when, the Crucible plans were adapted to incorporate the use of the Catalyst. Presumably, the Crucible was not sufficiently powerful to defeat the Reapers.
So we used their own technology against them.
Precisely.
Why couldn't you tell me this before?
It was feared that if the Reapers were aware of the Catalyst's intended use, they would retake control of it. I am programmed to withhold that information until the Crucible is complete.
It's as ready as it's gonna be. Let's get it to the Citadel.
That may no longer be possible.
Why not?
The one who broke through my security protocols, the one you call the Elusive Man, has fled to the Citadel and informed the Reapers of our purposes.
Damn it!
Then the Citadel is in danger. The Reapers will take control of it.
They already have. The Citadel has been moved to the Reaper-controlled space.
Moved? To where?
To the system you refer to as Sol.
Earth.
Correct. The Reaper forces will now consolidate power around the Catalyst and protect it at all costs. The odds of accessing it are remote.
Don't count us out yet. We've come this far and we'll finish this. We'll get the Crucible to Earth.
I hope you find success.
Edie, get me Haggard. He needs...
Not so fast. You. He did warn you not to overstay your welcome.
As I've said before, I think Kai Leng is really funny. He's inherently a bit crap. He's the reserve Shepard, the guy Cerberus brings out when Shepard goes rogue at the end of Mass Effect 2. He's the backup, the second choice. Both Shepard and Kai Leng have cybernetic implants, courtesy of Cerberus. But Shepard's are subtle, sophisticated, near invisible. You'd barely know Shepard was part Reaper. Kai Leng's, though, are obvious, ugly, a crude replacement for his eyes and legs. You could even extend this to Saren and the Reaper minion cyborg implants. For all their technological prowess, the Reaper minions are ultimately crude fusions of machine and flesh, human arm cannons forcibly grafted onto howling Batarians. Leng and Saren are a clumsy mishmash of organic and synthetic. Even the Elusive Man has those creepy ghost eyes, and by the end his fall from grace and gracefulness will be even more apparent. Shepard is the better cyborg, second maybe only to the Reapers themselves. And that's just one of the more obvious ways BioWare tells you Leng is second best. Thus his victories, his boasting, especially the infamous email he sends you after Thessia, have that underlying subtext. In that sense, he's not entirely unlike Conrad Werner. He tries so hard to be Shepard when there already is a Shepard. He can't help but get it wrong. Compared to characters like Rex, Mordin or Legion, the last someone who literally wears Shepard's old armour. These characters follow in Shepard's footsteps, but apply Shepard's example to their own lives, transcending barriers to create a new, better galaxy. They become heroes, while Leng is just a patsy for the Elusive Man. And in turn, the Elusive Man thinks he can rival Shepard for saving the galaxy from the Reapers, when, all along, he's just another machine.
That was profane, you son of a bitch.
The Citadel is in position. The Reapers are preparing to complete their harvest of your species.
I'll stop them.
It is too late. I recommend investigating.
I'll stop them. Barely.
I assume you've heard about the Citadel.
Just now.
Do we know what's going on? Why it's here?
The Citadel is the catalyst. Thanks to the Elusive Man, the Reapers are now aware that we know.
And so they moved it here to protect it?
As far as I can tell.
What does this mean for the Crucible?
I'll talk to Hackett about that, but it looks like our plan is even more desperate now.
Agreed. I've got a team in London. The Reapers have been preparing for something here. Now, we know what for. We'll scout it out. Try to find out as much as we can.
Roger that.
Well, at least we'll be seeing you sooner rather than later.
Be careful, sir.
You too, Shepard. Anderson out.